Hello, welcome to the Glopo class. Today we are going to start with one of my favorite units, human rights. I really love this unit. The reason of loving this unit, I think not one reason but multiple reasons, because this unit provides multiple wide scope to explore further. And it's not that where I have to teach students a lot, because as you know, human rights, even if you will ask any layman or any common man, they would be able to tell you something about human rights. So what do we do in global politics with regards to human rights? That we would be seeing in upcoming videos, right? So this is my first video on human right. I would be posting many more videos on human rights. So let's get started without further ado. So first thing I would like to show you, what does our Glopo guidebook talks about or shows us or contains the information about human right. So this is about the human right unit. Today we would be looking at the nature and evolution of human rights. All right. And under this nature and evolution of human right, we have definitions of human right, UDHR, which I would be covering in my second video, and then development in human rights over time and space. So here I would be covering brief history, which I won't go into detail of this. Along with the brief history, I would be covering the definition of human right. As per IB guidebook, I would be covering characteristics, that means features of human rights, then positive and negative human right, three generations of human rights, and theoretical view. Theoretical means two foundational theories, liberalism and realism. So these are the chapters what we would be covering today in our class. All right. So these are the further chapters connected to human right, which I would be covering over a period of time under this unit. Okay, so this is a wonderful video which talks about development of human right, brief history of human right. I would be giving you the link of this presentation in the comment box, in the description box below, where you can watch this video. You can have a look at this complete presentation. I would suggest you to have a look at this presentation as I go, because I keep modifying this presentation, right? So today I would be covering few slides of this presentation. Stick to that. The next video go as per the slides number which I'm covering in this video. All right. So kindly give a watch to this video and take down your notes. In this video, you would be seeing history of human right, and these are okay. If I ask you human rights and I ask you that, do you think that this is a new concept? You may say no, right? Then I may ask you that, okay, when do you think that, when did it originate? When do you think that that was the first time when human rights were introduced to the human being? So first we have this formal documentation of Cyrus Cylinder, then Magna Carta, Petition of Rights, United States Declaration of Independence, US Constitution and Bill of Rights, Declaration of the Rights of Men and of the Citizens, the First Geneva Convention. These are some of the formal documentation before we go on for UDHR, which was propagated in 1948 by United Nations, right? Now to see the brief history when I say, so that means around 150 to 200 words. It's written in my speaker's notes. Kindly have a look. I'm not going in detail of the brief history of human rights, right? Just to have knowledge at the surface level, go through all these documents, okay, all these historical context of these rights. Let's go further. In case if you love reading Calvin and Hobbes, you would enjoy this one. So this is for those who would love to smile by reading this cartoon character. All right. So before I jump on the definition of human right, just think, what do you understand by human right? What is human right for you? Write down somewhere. All right, write down in just one sentence. It could be one word. It can be even just one picture also. Okay, what represents human right to you? do that. You would be uh, you would be exploring, you would be even amazed to think on human right, that what it can be, because this is a kind of buzzword, if I say, because multiple times we happen to say we happen to say my human right is violated, this country is not giving me the human right, this country is not protecting human right, this country is able to intervene in the other country because of the violations of the human right country, right? Lot of these words we have been hearing or listening on the podcast, on the news channels, and through different sources, right? So think, what is human right? Here we go. Let me start the pen tool. All right. So here we go on. Human rights are basic claims and entitlements, right? They are the basic claims and entitlements that many argue one should be able to exercise simply by virtue of being a human being. By simply being a human being, one is given those human rights. Many contemporary thinkers argue they are essential for living a life of dignity, are inalienable. What is inalienable? Inalienable, if you just see the simple English of this term, that means which cannot be separated, inalienated, right? So rights cannot be separated from one. These are inherent rights, right? The moment you are born, you are given right, you are born with the rights. So these rights which cannot be separated, that is called inalienable, and should be accepted as universal. What is universal? Universal means um, uh, they cannot be discriminated on the ground of class, caste, place of birth, gender, okay, any kind of discrimination. They are equally given across the world. They are universal. Right to life, right to life, it's universal right, everywhere it is given, right? So universal rights which are given across the world, right? The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted by the UN in 1948, is recognized as the beginning of the formal discussions of human rights. Okay, that's the beginning of the formal discussions. But before that, we just discussed about the brief history, right? Brief history. We didn't go into the detail. You can just go through them. Those are the seven historical monuments what I showed you, and in the speaker's note you would find the description as well. Now, what are the critiques about this human right? So human right critics argue that they are Western. Okay, so Western means that they believe that they are imposed by the Western world, and when this was drafted, UDHR was drafted, it was dominated by the Western people only. And another thing, when we talk about Western world, so that means they are not culturally relative. Culturally relative means that they do not value the other cultures, they value just the Western culture only. So there is this complete dichotomy on universalism versus cultural relativism. All right, so these are the two theories what we would be covering in the further video. What is universalism versus cultural relativism? I hope this definition is clear to you. All right, let's go further. Okay, now I would like to ask you, what are the characteristics of human rights? Think over it. Okay, characteristics, when I say, that means what are the features of human rights? If you can recall, I said one, universal, right? Okay, so first I said universal, right? This is what I spoke about. I'm not repeating this one. Then the second one, can you recall, what did I say? I said inalienable, right? Inalienable, which cannot be separated. You are born with those rights. Then the third one is indivisibility. Indivisibility. All right, indivisibility. So rights can never be given up in exchange for other rights. Okay, they cannot be divided. All human rights are indivisible and interdependent. They are government can't say that we are giving you right to life and liberty, and to the other person we are giving right to justice. No, they are interdependent, they cannot be divided, right? So this is what indivisibility all about. I'm stopping this pen too so that I can see. Okay, then we have equality, justice, liberty. All right, these are the other rights. Can you tell me the four key concepts of this unit? What are the four key concepts of this unit? Think. First, what you are studying, human rights, then liberty, then equality, and justice, right? Justice. All right. So these are the four key concepts. Do you see any interconnectivity in amongst these four concepts? Yes. Can you say that there would be equality given without justice, without liberty? There would be human rights without liberty, equality, and justice, right? Interdependent, indivisible. So these are the three concepts which are attached to the unit named human rights. Human rights itself is a key concept, and apart this key concept, we have three other key concepts. We would be looking at the definition in the further videos. Another feature of this human right, it is internationally recognized, okay, documented also. So you see that there are the number of the documentation which are recognized internationally also. Legal protection, they are given legal protection. There are the rights which are internationally legalized. For sure, at national level they are legalized. So these are the features of human right. I hope this point is clear to you. What are the characteristics of human right? So characteristics of human right, number one, universal, inalienable, indivisible. Then equality, liberty, justice, legal protection, internationally guaranteed rights, right? So these are the few features of human rights. Let's go further. Then we talk about two kinds of human rights: negative human rights and positive human rights. What is positive human rights? Positive human rights, that means where the government requires action, where the government steps in and protects those rights. That is called positive rights. For example, right to education. Government wants to provide this right to education. That means there is some effort required by the government to take those actions. That is called positive rights. Negative rights, you ask government to step back. You say that please leave us alone, right? You don't want interference by the government. That is called negative right. For example, right to live, freedom from torture, right? Freedom of speech and expression, very much talked about, right? Freedom of speech and expression, where you say that let me speak, let me express myself, you please don't interfere. You happen to say to the government many times. I'm from India, so I can say this one because we have been listening to the news more often, where we happen to say that the control of the government on the media, and where the public raising this concern that please government step back, you do not interfere in the social media or in this print media, all these things. Negative right? So positive right, where you are asking government to step in and protect those rights. That could be providing judicial system and education, right? You think at least one right where you want government to intervene in that to protect, okay? Negative right, where you do not want government to intervene in that thing. Clear? Okay. Apart this one, positive right actually focuses more on economic, social, and cultural rights. Okay, economic, social, and cultural rights, whereas positive rights, it focuses more on civil and political right. Civil and political right, you want government. You want government to protect all these things. Negative right, social, cultural, economic right, you don't want government to do all these things. Can you think of the theory which is connected over here? See, negative right, which economic right, right? You don't want government to intervene in that. Who can they be? Capitalist, right? Capitalist or the liberalism, where they happen to say to the government, please don't interfere in our business. Let us rule our business, right? Laissez-faire. Where you are talking about Adam Smith's philosophy, or you are talking about invisible hand also, where you are telling government that you please just take care of our security. You don't intervene in our financial matters or in our business, in our economic. So this is negative right. Positive right, you please provide something to us. You provide pension rights to us. You provide housing. You provide clean water and the services, opportunities, everything. Who are they? Socialist. If you actually think from that angle, then you would find that positive rights which are more from socialism, whereas negative rights which are more from capitalism. Clear this one? Negative rights, socio-economic and cultural rights, and positive rights more on the basis of the political and the civil rights. All right. I hope this thing is also clear to you. Now let's go further. Three generations of types of human rights. Okay, don't get confused that I just spoke about two types of human rights, which is positive and negative rights. Now again, I'm saying types. It's okay. Positive and negative human right, and then we are talking about the three generations of human rights. I'll show you the chart, which would be very easy to interpret these three generations. So first generation, which came in 18th and 19th century. Clear? First generation, 18th and 19th century. What kind of rights were propagated during that time? Civic and political rights. Civic and political rights were propagated during 18th and 19th century. What was the key theme? Liberty. Okay, these rights were focused on liberty. As you can see, civic and political rights, liberty was the main focused area. What kind of rights were demanded that time? Life, liberty, property, non-discrimination, freedom from arbitrary arrest, freedom of thought. These kind of rights were demanded during that century. What were the key documents now where we are studying these rights? United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. How many rights are there? GK. Fun fact, if I say 30. 30 human rights are there. So 3 to 21, they are discussing about liberty rights, right? The rights which are connected to liberty. And another one is International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. These are the documents. Now comes second generation rights, which was propounded in 20th century. Its main types of second generation rights were economic, social, and cultural. Do you recall something? Negative rights, right? Economic, social, and cultural. Negative rights, where they don't want government to intervene, right? They don't want government to intervene in these rights. What is the key theme? Equality. Work, social security, healthcare, education, paid holidays. So that means these kind of rights were demanded. What are the key documents? United Nations Declaration, Article 22 to 27, International Covenant on Economic and Social and Cultural Rights. These are the key documents in present scenario. Third generation, post 1945. Type was solidarity rights, and key theme was fraternity. Now, whatever rights you see or you are demanding in the present scenario, you are putting them under this third generation. It could be self-determination, peace, development, environmental protection, your LGBTQ rights, or all these kind of rights are under these fraternity or solidarity rights. What are the current documents in this? Stockholm Convention on the Human Environment 1972, Rio Earth Summit 1992. These are not limited. Key documents are not limited to only this one. Remember this one. You can add many more key documents also. Wherever you feel that, hey Monica, I would like to fit this document under the first generation, under the second generation, under the third generation, good, go ahead. Okay, we are just broadly saying the three generations of human rights, which we are still continuing. Clear? I hope these three generations are clear to you. um, so first generation is also called, I think that just sometimes back I spoke about second generation as the negative right, but no, first generation is considered as the negative right because it is civic and political right, and this and this second and the third one is considered as the positive right, because here we want the intervention by the government, here we don't want intervention by the government, right? So this is the first generation is known as negative right, and the second and third generation known as positive rights. Okay. All right, so this is the last slide for the day, which is called as theoretical lenses. If you remember, in PSIR unit, we covered two foundational theories, or I don't remember if I covered it. I would be covering, if I haven't covered, I would be covering all the theories. So, in theoretical lenses, there are two perspectives, foundational perspectives, liberal perspective and realist perspective. Just think, if you already know, what would be the view of liberal perspective. Liberal perspective would say that this is the four most important, right? Four most important rights given to the human being, and government is there just to protect the human right, right? So they would protect human rights. This is what the liberal perspective would uh, come into the picture. And they say that every government has the right to protect, or right to be responsible towards the citizens. They are there just to protect the human rights. In case if they don't do, then the other country can intervene in that. Liberal perspective, right? Where they are where they happen to give minimal interference, minimal interfering right to the government. Realistic perspective, do you think they would agree to these human rights? Human rights, it's more about the ethical and the moral concepts, right? And they don't believe in the moral concept or ethical attitude. What do they say? They say that this is just a facade, okay? Because national interest is supreme, and they do not believe in human right. And they say that in case if a government happen to play around national interest and then they happen to give human right, then it's okay. But they don't believe it, they don't consider it as a primary thing from a government side to give to the human being. National interest is supreme, whereas human rights are secondary. All right, so this is what they think, and they say that every country is actually ruling by their national interest, not by the human right consideration or the moral or the ethical values, because they are the imperialist one, or they believe what is then what ought to be, right? So this is what the realistic perspective talk about. So liberal perspective, which will believe in human right; realistic perspective, which won't believe in human right, which says that human rights can be used by a state to serve its own national interest. Clear these two theoretical lenses? All right, so this was the end of today's session. What we have covered, let's quickly have a recap. We first talked about brief history. In brief history, I did not go into detail. I have given you the link in the description box below. Just have a look over there. You don't have to go into the detail because IB has not asked so far any historical context, all right? But just to have a foundational knowledge of this unit, just go through what are the historical context. Even if you happen to remember that, okay, there was Cyrus Cylinder, there was the Bill of Rights, there was Magna Carta, there were French Revolution rights. If you happen to remember all these things, it's completely okay. You don't have to go into detail about these historical context or historical events of human rights. Then we spoke about the definition of human right, that they are given by they are given considering human beings. So they're the basic fundamental rights given to every human being. Then we spoke about the characteristics, that what are the characteristics of human being. Recall that what are the characteristics of human being. We spoke about positive and negative human right. We spoke about three generations of human right. First generation, which is considered as negative or positive? Negative, right? Second and third generation, which are considered as the positive rights. And then finally we spoke about theoretical lenses, where we discuss that what would liberalist think about the human right and what would realist think about human right. I hope you liked the video. If yes, then please hit the like button and subscribe it, because this is my first video on human right unit. In upcoming days, I would be uploading many more videos. Stay tuned, stay happy.